Our valley freeways and across the state, their cameras watch our every move every day on our commutes.
The agency controlling the feeds decides what we get to see and what we don't. Brittany Thomason looked into why those cameras keep going dark during critical moments on our highways.
What's up with this?
Yes, Yetta and Jamie, we looked through more than 2 years of records showing each time ADOT cut feeds, and just last year, video went dark at least 5 times more than it did in 2020. And the state agency did not even type up its policy for cutting those videos until our station caught the aftermath of a controversial shooting. Driving through Arizona, 450 cameras are focused on our freeways, watching you on your way to work, capturing accidents and backups on our highways. The department in charge of these cameras might just be the most powerful agency in the state. ADOT manages the freeways, driver's licenses, and vehicle registrations. It also decides whether you see those camera feeds or they go black.
It's basically common sense. We do not want to show things that might be disturbing or violent on this system simply because there are thousands of people, some of whom may be children, or people who simply should not want to see that.
But is ADOT really protecting you or itself? In May of 2020, 28-year-old Dion Johnson was shot and killed along the Loop 101 during a confrontation with a state trooper. There's no body cam video of the shooting, but Arizona's Family was the only TV station to record a traffic feed from ADOT showing the aftermath. About 2 months later, ADOT created this traffic camera feed procedure. We asked ADOT's Doug Nick whether timing was a coincidence. Did the Dion Johnson incident change the way that ADOT and DPS look at cutting feeds?
No.
What was the procedure before this was created in July 2020?
We codified that procedure because it was basically a common sense procedure before that had not been written down, which is common practice at this agency, that when we see a procedure that maybe has been done rather informally, let's make it a standard work.
But many don't think it's common sense at all, including those with the Black Lives Matter movement.
They don't want transparency because they don't want accountability.
They say it's no coincidence at all that a state policy was created so quickly after the Johnson shooting.
They got under a lot of heat because of that video. They switched up their tactics.
Nick says the purpose of these cameras is to show the public what's happening on Arizona freeways in real time. ADOT controls each of the cameras from its traffic operations center. They have the ability to move the cameras, to zoom in, and to even shut off those feeds altogether. Also inside the TOC is a DPS trooper.
The DPS troopers are there simply to keep an eye on what's going on the freeways so that if they need to deploy some resources for law enforcement, they can do that.
We've got at least 1 or 2 officers en route.
Troopers have been stationed inside the TOC since 2014. They can ask to turn off the feed, however, ADOT says they make the final call. Anyone, including our TV station, can pull up live traffic feeds around Arizona. We can even record off this video. But when ADOT cuts the feed, news stations and the public are literally in the dark, unable to see what's going on and unable to record the images for later. But those inside the Traffic Operations Center, including that DPS trooper, still can. According to the procedure, ADOT can cut video feeds when law enforcement is controlling the camera position for reasons other than traffic conditions. It also says feeds can be cut when ADOT is tracking law enforcement activities, where live images would hamper operations or officer safety. Since ADOT created the procedure, camera feeds have been cut hundreds of times, from freeway pursuits to crashes and high-risk stops. And when ADOT pulls the plug, it's not just one camera, but on the entire system. Hundreds of cameras all across the state. Do you find it troubling feeds were cut at least 87 times in 2020 and more than 500 times in 2021?
No, because again, 99.3% of the time those cameras are on.
So how does Arizona compare to other states? New Mexico and Nevada tell me they try to cut feeds only as a last resort. Coming up in about 8 minutes, we take a look at how their policies compare to Arizona.
Right.
Earlier in the show, I explained how ADOT cut camera feeds more than 600 times in the last couple years. We asked the state agency for records dating back to 2019, but the logs they sent us only start documenting cuts in May of 2020. I looked into how often states surrounding us cut their feeds, and they tell me it's not often. Our neighboring states like New Mexico, Nevada, and Colorado have their own traffic cameras. Each state operates their feeds a little different.
There are really very few reasons that we would cut the feed, only if it's just not appropriate for the public to see.
It is rare that the cameras are suppressed. It does sometimes happen that cameras are momentarily suppressed if necessary for public privacy and public safety.
Why is our state cutting feeds so much more often compared to other states?
I can't speak for other states, and we're looking at one of the largest metropolitan areas here in the country with rapidly growing population, rapidly growing freeway system, and rapidly growing number of cameras that go with that.
Nick says ADOT cuts feeds to keep the public from seeing disturbing or violent scenes. Attorney Benjamin Taylor believes the community deserves to see critical moments happening on our freeways.
Why are they being turned off when this is evidence to show whether or not a person did right or wrong? And this helps a judge and a jury to make critical decisions in the court of law.
For example, according to ADOT's own records, they turned off the feed several times in 2020 so DPS could use freeway cameras to monitor protesters. In July of 2020, logs revealed DPS and an ADOT supervisor were monitoring demonstrators very closely on the Mill Avenue Bridge in Tempe, zooming in on people without their knowledge, even though there isn't a direct path to the Loop 202.
I think it is deeply troubling given the history in this country of inappropriate and unnecessary police surveillance of peaceful civil rights protesters, that this would be continuing now.
The intention of these cameras are to look at traffic accidents and freeway accidents. However, it looks like law enforcement used these cameras to spy and try to control what protesters were doing.
If somebody's going to get on a freeway or something like that, or there's going to be an issue of violence, potential violence, again, regardless of the genesis of the protest, we are simply not going to take the opportunity to see that or show that to the general public.
Logs show ADOT officers cut feeds 15 times in just the first 4 days of this year. The reasons vary: wrong-way drivers, high-risk traffic stops, vehicle fires, even pedestrians walking on the freeway. And when the cameras go dark, there's no way to record, no way to go back and review what happened. Nick says there are no current plans to change the procedure.
The assumption that DPS is doing something wrong in those situations, when in fact, while the biggest concern may be what is somebody else doing. If this is a high-risk stop, we don't want to show any violence, no matter who perpetrates it.
We asked DPS for an interview on camera. They denied several of our requests, but did answer our questions in writing. Something interesting: troopers who sit in the ADOT Operations Center don't have body-worn cameras, but they do plan to issue them to all state troopers in the future. So will the troopers monitoring the feeds be wearing those cameras? Well, Yetta and Jamie, that's something we will be closely following.
Yeah, be interesting to hear those conversations leading up to that.
Yeah, very interesting information brought to light here. Brittany, thank you.